On the last day of his life, Socrates was calm, not resigned, not performing courage for the people watching, genuinely, completely calm. His friends sat around him weeping. Some could not look at him. Some had to leave the room because the grief was too large to stay inside their bodies. And Socrates, who was about to drink poison, who had been sentenced to death by the city he had served with his entire life, told them to stop crying. Not because death did not matter, because he did not believe death was the end. He spent his last hours on earth, the last hours before the hemlock, making an argument, a philosophical argument, for why the soul survives the death of the body. Plato was there, or close enough to hear every word, and what he witnessed that day, the serenity of a man who genuinely believed he was not ending, only changing, shaped everything he would ever think about what a human being actually is. Today we are going to follow that argument, not because you have to believe it, but because the question it asks, what are you, really, beneath the body that will one day be gone, is the most important question philosophy has ever dared to take seriously. Plato believed the human being is made of two fundamentally different things: the body and the soul. The body is physical. It changes. It gets hungry, tired, sick, old. It desires things: food, pleasure, comfort, warmth. And eventually, without exception, without negotiation, it dies. The soul is something else entirely. For Plato, the soul is the part of you that thinks, that reasons, that recognizes beauty and truth and justice, not because someone taught you, but because something in you already knew. And here is the core of his argument. The soul does not belong to the physical world. It belongs to the world of the forms, the realm of eternal, unchanging, perfect truth that exists beyond what the senses can perceive. And what does not belong to the physical world cannot be destroyed by physical death. To understand why Plato believed this so deeply, you need to understand one of his most beautiful arguments. He called it the argument from recollection. Have you ever encountered an idea, a mathematical truth, a moral principle, a moment of pure beauty, and felt not that you were learning it for the first time, but that you were remembering it? Plato thought this feeling was not a metaphor. He thought it was literally true. He argued that the human soul, before it entered the body at birth, existed in the realm of the forms. It had direct knowledge of perfect beauty, perfect justice, perfect truth. Then it was born into a body and forgot. The forgetting is complete at first. But then, through education, through philosophy, through the careful turning of the mind toward truth, the soul begins to remember. This is why Plato believed that learning is not the acquisition of new information. It is the recovery of what the soul already knows. He called it anamnesis, unforgetting. Think about the last time you encountered a truth that stopped you. Not because it was new, but because it felt like something you had always known and had somehow lost access to. That feeling, Plato says, is the soul recognizing its home. In the Phaedo, the dialogue set on the last day of Socrates' life, Plato lays out the full argument for the soul's immortality through the voice of Socrates himself. Socrates makes 4 separate arguments, each one building on the last, each one more difficult to dismiss than the one before. The first is the argument from opposites. Everything in nature moves between opposites. Hot becomes cold. Sleep becomes waking. Life becomes death. But if the movement only goes one way, if life becomes death, but death does not become life again, then eventually everything would be dead. The world would have run out of living things a long time ago. Therefore, something returns from death. Something persists. The second argument is the one from Recollection, which we have already explored. If the soul remembers things it could only have known before birth, it must have existed before birth. And if it existed before birth, why would death be any different from birth? Simply another threshold, another passage. The third argument is perhaps the most powerful. Socrates asks, what kind of thing can be destroyed? Things that are composite, made of parts, can be broken apart. A table can be split into planks. A body can decay into its elements. But things that are simple, that have no parts, that cannot be divided, cannot be destroyed by dissolution. There is nothing to pull apart. The forms are like this. Beauty itself cannot be split into pieces. Justice itself has no components that can be separated. And the soul, because it belongs to the realm of the forms, because it is oriented toward the simple and the eternal, rather than the composite and the changing, partakes of that same indestructibility. Socrates makes this argument calmly, sitting in a prison cell, hours before his death. Now, Plato was not naive. He did not dress immortality up in comfortable images of clouds and harps. He believed the quality of the afterlife, the state of the soul after death, depended entirely on how the soul had lived. A soul that had spent its life enslaved to the body, to appetite, to pleasure, to the endless demands of physical existence, would carry those attachments beyond death. It would be heavy, earthbound, pulled back toward the physical world it had never learned to leave behind. But a soul that had spent its life practicing philosophy, by which Plato meant the practice of turning away from the merely physical toward the genuinely true, would be light, free, ready. This is why Socrates could drink the hemlock without trembling. He had spent 70 years preparing his soul for exactly this moment. Philosophy for Plato and Socrates was not an intellectual hobby. It was a practice of dying, not morbidly, but in the sense of learning daily to loosen the soul's grip on the things that would not last, so that when the time came, there was nothing left to lose. You do not have to believe in the immortal soul to take something from this. What Plato is really asking, beneath the metaphysics, beneath the arguments, is a question you can answer right now. What are you actually made of? Not your body, not your job, not your reputation, or your possessions, or the version of yourself that other people see. What is the part of you that thinks, that reaches toward truth, toward beauty, toward justice, even when it costs you something? That part, Plato says, is what you most truly are. And the question of how you treat it, whether you feed it or starve it, whether you listen to it or drown it out, is the most important question a human life can ask. Socrates knew his answer. He lived it so completely that he could die without flinching. What is yours? This is Philochemy. We will see you in the next one.